StrayAllDay.com.
Now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That's the go-getter energy that moves anyone out there, including yourself, especially yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. We put all this together in one bundle, one package, one mindset, one philosophy, one show, one book. This masterclass right here that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is how to stop living in fear. If you happen to be living in fear right now, or if you have ever lived in fear, or I guess we can't do nothing about the past, but if any time in the future you find yourself living in fear, then you bookmark and refer back to this masterclass right here, where we are going to address and handle this problem of finding yourself living in fear. I thought of this topic specifically because I saw this story on ESPN of a linebacker who plays football in the NFL. He was telling the story how he was in a Chipotle restaurant and this linebacker happens to be black, and he was with some friends, and his friends all happen to be white. So inside this Chipotle, some customer alleged that the linebacker used some vulgar language and told the manager on the linebacker. Now, again, this is all according to the linebacker's story. The manager then of Chipotle told the linebacker that he had to leave the store because of his foul language. The linebacker relented, saying that he had not used any foul language and he was not guilty of what he had been accused of by his fellow customer, and he was not going to leave based on that. The manager then threatened to call the police if the linebacker did not leave. Now, some more conversation ensued after that, and according to the linebacker's story, the player was in his town. He played for the Indianapolis Colts, so he was in Indianapolis. And he said once the manager of the Chipotle found out who he was and that he played for the Indianapolis Colts, the tone of the conversation changed significantly, and the cops never ended up coming. But the linebacker continued in his story, and he told the story on social media that he felt like, man, I got a wife and kids. Assuming he heard that the cops were going to possibly be called, he thought to himself, I got a wife and kids. I might not make it home tonight if the cops end up coming to this situation. Now, I am not here to invalidate this gentleman's feelings, or if he really believed that, or if he was saying it for sensationalism. I don't know. We can't read that man's mind. I'm not here to invalidate his feelings if that's how he actually felt. However, the thing that I did not like is the fact that he broadcasted this. He publicly broadcasted this concept of, if the cops get called, I might not make it home tonight. Where he got that from, I'm not quite understanding. There was another story where there was a young man. There's a guy by the name of Ryan Clark who used to play in the NFL. He has a son who's playing college football, and the son told this story about how he was at a Whataburger. He's in college, I believe, somewhere in Arizona. Him and a couple of his friends went to a Whataburger after hours, where the store was open but only for drive-thru. They didn't have a car, so they walked in the parking lot and they walked up to cars that were at the drive-thru and asked them, hey, if we give you the money, can you buy us food? And there was a woman who they asked, and she said no, and then she rolled down her window after she got her food and started using the N-word very judiciously with these young men, again according to the young man's story, which, okay, fine. And the kid told the story on social media. I guess this millennial generation, this is the thing to do. You tell the story of something bad that got said to you or done, and then you get the victory lap of sympathy on social media. Fine. Not what I would do, but I understand people doing it. So he did that, and that was all fine and good. It was over. And then the next day, though, the father, Ryan Clark, who happens to work for ESPN, he basically became like this headline star of the sports world for about 24 hours, because he went on ESPN and he was interviewed about the whole thing. How do you feel about what happened with your son? And Ryan Clark just, it was very dramatic, the way that he went and started talking and saying, man, it makes me just realize how people see us in this world, and us, he was meaning black people and especially black men, how people see us in this world. And I just started to think, what if that woman had called the police and the cops had come and something had happened? And then Ryan Clark, he breaks down crying on ESPN over this whole roller coaster he just took himself on. Because remember, the story was, his son just told the story of, he asked the woman to get him food, the woman said no, and the woman called him the N-word and drove off. That's all that happened. She did not call the cops. She did not pull a gun. There was no physical altercation. Nothing else happened in this situation. The other thing the kid said was that the manager at the Whataburger because the woman complained that she had been harassed by those kids, so the manager gave her food for free. Again, according to his story. Now, there's some mitigating circumstances there. First of all, if I'm in a drive-thru at like 11 o'clock at night, there's no walk up to my fucking window. I don't care what you look like, black, white, whatever. Don't walk up to my window no 11 o'clock at night in no drive-thru. And if my girl is driving the car by herself, I don't want no man walking up to her fucking window. So anyway, you could see that as harassment, but anyway, whatever. Nothing ended up happening. Just some words got exchanged, or according to the kid's story, only the woman was talking shit and they didn't say nothing, allegedly. But then Ryan Clark, the father, he gets on ESPN and he's breaking down crying on TV over what? I don't think he was crying over the N-word. He was crying over the possibility of what could have happened if the woman had called the cops, and then if there was a bad situation with the cops, and then if the cop had done something and something had happened to the kid. And I'm like, all right, he's really, really reaching right here. This is a huge stretch. And he's on ESPN crying, and he was like a star on ESPN for a day off of this. And the same thing with this linebacker. His story didn't become as prominent, but to me that was crazy. And the reason why I felt both of those were crazy is not because, again, I'm not invalidating either of those gentlemen's feelings for feeling how they want to feel. What made it crazy is that these platforms, such as ESPN, both of these were on ESPN, they are amplifying these messages of people spreading fear. Ryan Clark was crying over nothing actually happened. Now, if something had happened and he was crying, I get it, but nothing actually happened. And for him to say, well, what if the woman had done this and then this and then this? It was all these if-then loops that he was just filling in with his own mind and then getting upset about it and crying. And now it's getting amplified. And now what's happening is that energy, that fear that he was crying over is spreading to a whole audience of people who are taking that in, just like I talked about in yesterday's episode. If that's all they're taking in, they're in the bubble of only taking in information from one source, and that source is always giving you the same type of information. All right, you're gonna start to feel whatever they're trying to make you feel. These algorithms are smarter than we are. So that right there, and then the same thing with the linebacker saying, well, if the cops get called, I'm thinking I'm not making it home today. Well, why wouldn't you make it home? What is the cop going to do to you? The cop's going to tell you to get out of the store. You're probably going to try to argue your case, and the cop says, well, look, you still got to leave. What are you going to do? All right, why would you not make it home? You're going to leave the store, get in your car, and drive home. What's going to happen there? Now, he's trying to draw the line. He's trying to, of course, connect the dot in the stretch that, okay, if the cop comes, because I'm a black man, I just think the cop's going to kill me. All right, we all know, logically and rationally, that that's probably not going to happen. It's highly unlikely that happens. And now, if he feels that that's going to happen, cool. He can feel whatever the hell he wants to feel. But to go and broadcast that to an audience of impressionable people who are looking up to you because you're an NFL player, or in the case of Ryan Clark, a former NFL player, and you're spreading this fear. Oh, if a cop comes along, something bad is just going to happen to me because I'm black and they're a cop. Like, let's not connect those dots and then get everyone else feeling the exact same fear. That's the thing that got my attention about the whole situation, is that they went public with it. All right, if you feel it, go ahead and feel it. But if you're going to spread some energy, at least spread something positive that's going to help people get better and improve. Don't spread something that's going to make people feel fearful or apprehensive, or just drive more of a wedge between one group of people and another group of people. All right, I'm not here today's episode is not about me changing your mind about the cops, however you choose to feel about them. And just the whole concept of what they're talking about, they're exacerbating this idea of a police officer means death sentence if you happen to be a black person. Listen, I'm a black person. I've dealt with police, and I've never been in a situation where I felt like anything was going to happen to me. I've never been brutalized by a police officer. That is not to say that it doesn't happen. It's not to say that it could not happen. But what I am saying is that we are not here to, first of all, a lot of people have made up their minds about this thing for whatever reason, because one reason could be what I talked about yesterday. The concept has been fed to them, and they think they came up with it objectively, and they actually didn't. But everybody, I'm here to help you stop walking around your life, in whatever area of life. You happen to be a black man afraid of cops. You happen to be a little girl afraid of butterflies. Whatever it happens to be, stop walking around in your life afraid of possibilities that have never actually happened. All right, because that's crazy. I think that's crazy to be afraid of something that's never actually happened, because in that case, you could be afraid of everything. Anything could happen. While I'm recording right now, a police officer could bust in the door with a gun out and decide to kill me because I'm black. I could be afraid of that. I could be scared of it right now. I could do an Instagram post right now about that and get 1,000 likes just because in the first half hour, just because I said it, even though nothing actually happened. So I believe we, as people, period, no matter what color, no matter what you do for a living, we don't want to be walking around in fear. And if you are in a position of prominence where you have people's ears, I don't care how many people, 2 people, 3 people, 1 million people, don't go spreading this fearful energy, especially if nothing actually has happened to you. I understand it's happened to other people, but all kinds of things have happened to people. People have been in buildings where the building collapsed and everybody in the building died. So should I make a video telling you why you should be afraid of buildings collapsing on your head? No, it doesn't really make sense. And it sounds kind of silly for me to say something like that, but this is exactly what these gentlemen just both did. The stories that I just told, you can look them up and see them for yourself. So today's topic is, my aim is to help you to stop living in fear or preclude you from living in fear if you were even thinking about it. Point number 1. The topic again is how to stop living in fear. Fear is a very powerful energy, and energy is contagious. That's why this is so important. You know what happens when fear takes over an environment? You remember the Great Recession, 2007, 8, 9-ish? That was fear. People were afraid. They didn't have money, or they were afraid they wouldn't have money. The Great Depression, which you were probably not alive for, but it was the same thing at an even deeper level. People didn't have money. People were killing themselves during the Great Depression because they had lost everything and they weren't sure they would ever be able to get it back. That's what happens when fear spreads through an environment. War happens when there's fear. War is somebody's afraid of something, and the other side might be afraid of something too, so they decide to take up arms and just go at it that way. A lack of communication occurs when someone's fearful. They don't communicate how they're feeling or whatever is on their mind, and other things can happen when there's no communication. When the communication is not clear, then people handle things other ways, and then there can become bigger problems. Conflict occurs when there's fear. All right, anger and lashing out are just forms of fear being communicated in different ways by people who may not be adjusted enough or have the emotional intelligence to conduct themselves any other way. Personally, on a personal level, outside of the environment, when you're fearful, it's hard for you to function. Have you ever been afraid of something, just a constant fear of something in your life? It was hard for you to eat, hard for you to sleep. You couldn't really feel happy even when something good was happening because you had that constant fear within you. It's hard for you to enjoy life when you're fearful. I remember 50 Cent told this story. Everyone knows 50 Cent, right? Rapper, got shot, came back from getting shot, and became a successful entrepreneur and business person and musician. But he told the story that after he got shot, before he signed a contract with Eminem and Dr. Dre and became a big time rapper, he was fearful when he first came back to his old neighborhood because, I mean, who wouldn't be? You got shot in your old neighborhood. Now you're back there. Everyone knows that you got shot and they know that you survived. Well, if somebody shoots at you 9 times, they're probably trying to kill you, right? He didn't just get hit by a random stray bullet and is sitting in his living room from the bullet from outside. Someone came up to him and shot him, which means they were trying to kill him and they didn't do it. So they might, coming from where he came from, try to finish the job. They go, let's shoot him again. Let's make sure he's dead this time. So he was very afraid of that happening to him again. And what 50 said was, the only time I didn't feel fear was when I was going on the offensive and looking for the person who shot me so I could kill them. Now, I'm telling you that not to tell you that you should go out and try to attack someone just because you think they might attack you first. Or if you're a black man listening to it, doesn't mean go find the next cop you see and attack them so they can't attack you first, kill them first so they can't kill you. No, that is not what I'm saying. Let's be clear. What I'm saying is 50 Cent, it was one of his natural instincts was aggression. That was just the way he's wired as a human being. So when he found that energy, he was able to let go of the fear because he was in his zone, and the thing that he was used to doing was using aggression. Now for you, you may not be wired that way. Your way may be to find something to laugh at, or find something to feel love about, or something that you can talk about, or something that you can lose yourself in, like a good book or a good movie. But figure out what that energy is that you can engage in and indulge in that will take you away from the fear. But if you are just out there living in a fearful state consistently, it'll be pretty hard for you to function and just live a normal life. I think you have experienced that before at some point, so you know what I'm talking about. Point number 2. Today's topic is how to stop living your life in fear. You can do an exercise called fear setting that I learned this from Tim Ferriss. And fear setting works the same way that goal setting works. It's just you're doing things for your fears instead of your goals. Now we know what goal setting is. You decide what are the things you want to achieve in life. You write them down. You make a plan to make them happen. We just talked about that a couple days ago. Fear setting is not when you make a plan to achieve the things you're afraid of, but it's when you first of all identify what you're afraid of. What are the things that you are afraid of? And what are the things that keep you up at night, the things that cause you anxiety, that are causing you stress? What are those things? Identify them, write them down, put them on paper, because this is fear setting. Same way you would do goals, you write them down, do the same thing with your fears. What are the worst things that could happen to you? Or what are the things you're afraid of, first of all? Then the next thing is, what's the worst possible outcome if this occurs? What's the worst possible, what is life going to look like if this thing actually happens? So you're afraid of going out of business and losing all your money. What is life going to look like if that happens? You're afraid that your husband or your wife might leave you. What is life going to look like if that happens? You're afraid your car is going to break down. What does life look like if you don't have a car? What does life look like if the worst case scenario occurs? If it's anything short of death, you need to write down what it looks like if it occurs. And then the next question is, what can you do to recover and get back to neutral if the worst case scenario does happen? So that's the third question in fear setting. So it's 2 ways to fear set. First of all, first thing you do, this for any way of fear setting, is you're going to identify the things you're afraid of and put them down on paper. Then you're going to ask yourself, what is the worst possible outcome if these things occur? What would life look like? All the ways your life will be terrible and fucked up if it actually happens, write those down. Okay? Now for the ones that are short of dying, or anything that's short of dying, those worst outcomes, your next thing to do is, how could I recover and get back to neutral if this occurs? And write all those things down. Now, anything that the worst possible outcome is that you would be dead, the third question is different. The third question will be, what can I do to mitigate this worst case circumstance from actually coming to fruition? What can I do to make sure this doesn't happen? Okay, a cop might get called while I'm at the Chipotle. What can I do to mitigate the worst case scenario of a cop ended up killing me? Well, I can cooperate with the police officer. I can speak to him calmly and rationally. If the cop asks me to leave, even though I think it's ridiculous, I will leave. And then I can go complain and handle it another way instead of trying to argue back with the cop, which probably is not going to work. So these are ways that you can mitigate the circumstance so that the worst case scenario doesn't happen, so that you don't die. So anything short of dying, your next question is, what can I do to get back to zero? And then you're asking that last question as well. What can I do to mitigate these circumstances? If it is dying, well, there's nothing you can do to recover because you're dead. But you can ask yourself, what can I do to mitigate and keep this from even occurring in the first place? That is what the fear setting exercise is. So instead of saying to yourself, let's just be afraid because of this, and while you work on the actions of the other side, whatever the other side may be, to keep them from doing that worst thing, how about you take initiative and ask yourself, what can I do? What can I control to help myself in the possibility that this situation occurs? Instead of just spreading fear throughout the community and making everybody be as fearful as you are, because that doesn't help anybody. Point number 3. Today's topic is how to stop living in fear if you find yourself in this state. Fear itself, this is just something that you need to realize and keep in your mind. This is a Stoic philosophy I'm about to give you right here. Fear itself will not keep you safe from the thing you're afraid of. You're afraid of getting beat up in school. Being afraid of getting beat up won't stop you from getting beat up. If you're afraid of the cops, that doesn't stop the cops from existing. The thing that you're afraid of is not going to stop being what it is just because you're afraid of it. All right, if you're afraid that the presence of a police officer means your life is in danger, it doesn't mean your life is not in danger when the cop shows up, if you actually believe that. All right, your life's still in danger. Being afraid ain't going to change that. In other words, here's what I'm saying. Fear of the thing doesn't stop the thing from happening. The purpose of fear, ladies and gentlemen, the original purpose in our lizard brains back from the caveman days is to keep us alive via the fight or flight instinct. Knowing when we need to fight to keep ourselves alive and knowing when we need to run away to keep ourselves alive. But that energy, that cortisol that gushes through you when you are in a state of fight or flight, that is not good for your health. All right? You don't want to be there all the time. All right? The purpose of fear is to give you a quick burst of adrenaline so you can either fight through the situation or run away from the situation. All right? You shouldn't be feeling it all the time, all day, every time you see a cop. Oh man, I might get killed. No. All right? That's not the reason fear exists. And we live in a world that is relatively, infinitely more safe than anything from 100, 200, 400, 500 years ago. Anything that was close to that. You don't need to live your life thinking that you had to either fight or run away from something all the time. All right? Disturbs the sleep, disturbs your bodily functions, your involuntary functions. And it doesn't serve anyone else when you start spreading that energy to other people. Energy is contagious, ladies and gentlemen. You have an energy of fear. The worst thing you can do is just go broadcast it to the rest of the world why you're afraid because you think something's going to happen to you that has never happened to you before. You're 20-something, 30-something, 40-something years old. It's never happened to you before, but now you're just afraid that that thing is going to happen. It logically doesn't make any sense, but we understand human beings are illogical. We are all irrational in different areas of life, at different parts of us, at different times, given different circumstances. Well, that's why we do the fear setting exercise, so you can get a hold of that irrationality. And if you're an adult, if you consider yourself to be a grown man or a grown woman, it is your responsibility to take control of that. Now, if you're talking about a 15-year-old kid, they can't control it, okay, I can understand that. But any of you who calls yourself an adult, all right, this is unacceptable. Get a hold of your mind, get a hold of your emotions, get control of yourself. Use the fear setting exercise. Again, so you can make logical sense of what you are feeling. So now you can at least start to control it instead of allowing it to control you. All right, isn't that what you want? I thought so. Let's recap today's class, which is how to stop living in fear. I told you the stories that I saw. Both of these guys happen to be football players telling these stories of something happening and something almost happening. Both situations, here's the funny thing, neither situation were the cops even involved. But anyway, let's recap the point. Point number one, fear is a powerful energy and energy is contagious. Know what happens when fear takes over an environment: recessions, depressions, war, lack of communication. Personally, you can't function, you can't eat, sleep, you can't be happy. Find an energy to focus on that takes you away from the fear, because the energy of fear will disturb everything else going on in your life. Point number two, do the fear setting exercise via Tim Ferriss. Consider the worst case scenario, then ask yourself, what would life look like if the worst case actually occurs? Then ask yourself, what can I do to mitigate the chances of that situation happening? And or what can I do to get back to neutral if that situation does happen? This is how you deal with fear proactively rather than allowing fear to take over you. Point number three, remember that fear itself will not keep you safe from the thing that you're afraid of. This is a Stoic philosophy. If you haven't read Louis Seneca's Letters from a Stoic, then go read it. That is what Stoicism is about. It's about seeing life as dispassionately as possible and not allowing your emotions to control you, but you controlling them. If you think the presence of a cop means your life is in danger, it doesn't mean your life's not in danger when the cop shows up, if you actually believe that. Just the fear itself doesn't change anything. In other words, fearing a thing does not stop the thing. The purpose of fear is to keep you alive via fight or flight, but you do not need that energy all the time because your life is not in danger all day, every day. And you know it isn't. So get control of your irrational lizard brain by using the fear setting exercise and focus yourself on some positive energy that takes you where you want to go and not on energy that's taking you away from where you want to be. Work on your game. Dre all day.